Hello and welcome back to It's on the Ledger. In this tutorial we'll be showing you around the assets. Let's start back at the home page on stellar.expert. We only want to focus on this top banner again. You can use the search bar in the top right to type in the asset code, the domain or the address of the asset to find it. But if you want to see more about the assets in general, start on the left with this tab, the Assets tab. When the page loads, we have the same information here in the top left, as we did on the home screen. We have nearly 120,000 assets on the network. There's over 1 billion payments that have been transacted. We've got the DEX trades and volumes, which is the decentralized exchange to buy and sell the assets. There are 25 billion XLM in circulation, and 80 billion XLM in the reserves. There's also an additional 2.7 million XLM in the fee pool. The graph on the right is also on the home page and under the network statistics at the top, which we explored in a previous tutorial. Let's see what's beneath the summary in this graph. Wow, there are lots of assets here. We can see the assets in the column on the left. And then moving by columns to the right, we have the date that it was created, the supply of the asset, how many trust lines there are to the asset, how many payments have been made with that asset, the 24-hour price fluctuation, and the 7-day price fluctuation by line graph. There's more coming up too, look. Gosh, this is going to take us quite a while to go through all of these assets. There's nearly 120,000 to look at. You might want to pause this tutorial and make yourself a nice cup of tea, and then grab some biscuits and then we can settle in for a while and start to go through them. Okay, let's get started. Just kidding. We aren't going to explore them all today. But let's have a look at the top of this list though. There's a drop-down option here on the right to filter the results. Let's take a look. Its default is overall rating, but we can choose to change it to weekly trade volume, overall trade volume, asset holders, total payments, or asset age. So let's take a look at asset holders. We've underlined the word holders so you can see where it lands within the filtered results. When the search is returned, we can see that we've got XLM at the top. That's pretty obvious. There's 6.9 million trust lines for XLM. Then we have TXT, HAFN, TFC, USDC, and here's a familiar one, Aqua. Let's take a look at the Aqua asset. When the page loads, it looks slightly different to an account page. We're going to cover the bottom section in a moment, but it looks familiar, right? Let's take a look at the data at the top first. The rating here of 8.4 is represented in the web on the right. It looks at liquidity, interoperability, weekly volume, trades, trust lines, payments, and age. These first few lines tell you about the asset, its total supply amount, when the asset had its first transaction, and how many trust lines. Underneath is about the financial aspect of the asset, and at the bottom, there are no asset authorization flags set, which means there are no special permissions to hold a trust line to the account or the asset. It cannot claw back the asset from a wallet without the consent of the account holder, and there is an immutable option where the account can never be deleted and the flags never set, and that hasn't been selected here either. But you might find flags that have been set on other assets. The last line here says that the asset is locked. There are only two options for the field. The other is unlocked. When an asset is locked, there are no further tokens that can be added to its supply, and when it is unlocked, the supply can be increased. At the very top, next to the asset, there is the domain for the asset. If you click this, it will take you to the website. The The address underneath is the asset issuer's account. Every asset needs to be attached to an account. Think of the account of an asset as the manufacturer, and when you click on it, it looks no different a layout to any other account page. We've got two tags here at the top, and the domain. Under the summary, it tells us the assets that have been issued by the account, and it's just Aqua for this account. When we click on it, it takes us back to the asset page we've just been looking at. Underneath the assets issued by the account, we've also got Show Assets with Zero Supply. To issue an asset with a supply of tokens, you need to have two addresses. This one here, this is the issuer. If you think of the issuer as a manufacturer, and in order to sell the goods, it needs a distributor, which is the second address that holds the tokens for general sale. The manufacturer cannot make the tokens as well as sell them, as it's like a conflict of interests. To be a distributor of an asset, you initially need to set up a trust line in order to make a connection with the manufacturer. Let's look at it from a retail perspective. You, as the potential client, could suggest an asset to the manufacturer, and this potential asset would then attach itself to the manufacturer's account for a review. But it will only receive the tokens if the manufacturer agrees to make it and fulfill the distributor's request, and if it does, it will no longer be a zero supply asset in this box, but appear in the box above, as it's an asset issued by the account to the distributor. To do this, both the secret keys are required from each account, both manufacturer and distributor. It's kind of like a business handshake to agree the deal. These zero balance assets have not had the golden handshake, so tread carefully in the zero asset folder, as not all the assets here are created by the same account as the one above that launched the assets. Even though it shows the same issuer, the distributor might not be associated to the issuer's account at all. Okay, let's go back to the asset page. Let's see what's down below what we've just talked about. Let's have a look in the middle. Okay, two graphs here. Let's zoom in. We've got one for the supply and accounts. You can see that the supply has remained the same since it launched by the blue line, nearly 100 billion tokens, and it stayed the same since the beginning. The orange line increasing upwards to the right is the total asset holders over the time the asset has gone live. There's nearly 148,000 here, and counting. On the right, it's the price history graph, and we'll be looking at graphs in a bit more detail in another video. But this is quite an interesting bar for the day that it launched, don't you think? The bit at the bottom, of course, is where all the juicy stuff is, and there's lots of information here, but nothing you haven't seen already, just more of it. Operations on the left, timestamps on the right, and of course all the details in the middle. Updated offer, updated offer, updated offer, and a cancelled offer. You see, you know all of these already. The amounts, of course, are a similar story. They're just different on each line too, as is the corresponding asset for each transaction. And of course the account that made the transaction in the first place. We're in all operations at the top, as you can see by the blue tab. We should know it well by now. And we've also seen payments, offers, and trades before too, but not trust lines, markets, or asset holders. We won't cover markets in this tutorial, as there's a whole section about them at the top, but let's have a look in trust lines. There are hundreds of trust lines on this asset, thousands of course in fact, and each line lets you know if the account has added the trust line or removed it. We're going to jump back to the top of this list. We've just seen the added and removed trust lines beneath, and every account that holds an active trust line for the asset can also be found here in asset holders. The graph shows how many accounts hold what volume of the asset, and if we hover the mouse over a bar, we can see that there are over 53,000 accounts that hold between 10 and 1,000 Aqua. And the bar on the right though is much smaller. There are much fewer accounts here, only 7 in fact that hold over 1 billion aqua. The box underneath you can put in a public address and you can see the rank of that asset holder. And under that, we can see the top 12 asset holders of aqua. There are 8 of the 12 directly linked to aqua. There's a storage wallet, an exchange, and a couple of what look like normal accounts, as there's nothing written next to them. Why not be nosy? Let's click on this account here and have a look at number 9. Every account page is laid out the same, remember, so there's nothing new on this page you haven't seen before. We've put the rank in at the top to remind ourselves of what they hold, and we can see below by the blue boxes that the numbers match. There's a tidy monthly drop of aqua coming here too. And the account that created it is the parent. Have a good look at this account when you've got time. What else can you find out about it? Back on our home page, if you want to search for an asset, just type in the asset code into the box and then click enter. Lots of accounts at the top, and the assets of course we can see just poking out underneath. Let's scroll down. Let's zoom in and then we can have a look at the first few results. At a quick glance, this top one looks to be the one most favoured. Look at how many funded trust lines it has compared to the others. And also, it's the oldest asset here. And 99% of the time, the oldest asset is the one to continue researching. Unless, of course, some naughty bunnies come along and found out about the asset and then pre-launched the token before the legitimate company. It's always imperative to do full research on all of the assets you plan to invest in to ensure the legitimacy of a project.